Camp today for our presentation on finding inclusive workplaces after graduation. And we are so pleased to have you students here, but also Brittany, thank you for joining us.
Yeah,
Brittany is the Title IX, and I hope I say this right, the Title IX Equal Employment Opportunity Investigator with
yeah,
the
yeah.
University of Kansas. And you really have an interest in a specific focus on anti-racism practices in recruiting and hiring process. So
Mhm.
we have numerous students who are looking for jobs, as you can tell, and would like to find an
Yeah,
inclusive workplace and be able to recognize that. So I'm pleased that you could be here. So
yeah.
um, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it. I think you are a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen. And then
Okay.
if you have questions, I'll manage the chat. But Brittany left plenty of time at the end to answer questions that you might have.
Yeah, I did. I wanted us to be able to chat as much as we could, just so that you all can have time to ask questions. So I took out a lot and really just kind of honed in on areas that I really want you all to focus on and to feel like you can ask your questions about. So for today, the objective is really just to unpack a little bit more how imposter syndrome specifically can impact the job search, our interview stage, negotiating, and really our professional success, right? I think oftentimes when we're talking about imposter syndrome in our college, it tends to be more focused on like that academic experience and just the college experience as a whole. But I really want to discuss how that may still move throughout our life as we enter these different stages that are unknown to us, right? It's a whole new uncharted territory. So, how do we make sure to manage it and not let it control decisions that we make, opportunities that we see and we want to explore? So, that's where we're going to really then move to being able to identify effective strategies for persisting throughout your professional career. Because once you get your job, I want you to think about it, whether it's the ultimate place where you want to be, you can see yourself being there 20, 30 years, but how do you stay there 20, 30 years and be successful? Or are you getting a job that's kind of the foundation for your career and it's going to be that stepping stone that's going to help you push to your ultimate goal, career goal? And how do we help you to push through that linear in a linear way, as well as if necessary, some vertical and horizontal ways and some little geometry that we're going to help you move through to persist. And then lastly, I really want to leave you with some tips and tools and just reminders of, of questions to ask and expectations that are reasonable to have when you're trying to decide whether or not a company is a good fit for you, not only just professionally, but personally as well. And I think we tend to leave that aspect out, that it's okay to want to find a company that has a good fit. But I also recognize, if you're identify as someone from a marginalized identity, that culturally there may be a reason that we tend to put our personal desires and fit on the back burner and push for professional for the sake of taking care of our community, maintaining our cultural relevancy, so on and so forth. So I want to give space to really unpack that and how do you find that balance. So when we're talking about imposter syndrome, again, it tends to come from a very academic lens, but I really just think that it's another way to see it as this internal pep talk that just doesn't really make you feel very peppy, right? It is a lot of a collection of failures that we may have experienced, maybe even failures that we've seen other people have, and we don't want to repeat that. It could even be, I saw my family member, my mom, my dad, a grandparent go through this failure, and I just don't want that to happen. And that could be me because I'm kind of like them, and so on and so forth. Or these moments of inadequacy that kind of rush through your brain and your mind, and that can be triggered through certain situations. So maybe they're asking you to take an aptitude test. Maybe they're asking you to complete to write a report, and they want to see your report writing skills, and you're like, I'm not very good at writing. For me, I have a job where I have to write reports, and I just feel like I've never really gotten an actual, we take English classes, but we never actually, I feel like, learned grammar. Like, how do you write to write a paper? And how do you write in this certain way? So I always feel a bit nervous and get anxious when I have to write a report, feeling a little bit nervous about that. And so these are some phrases that I think are pretty common for us to hear, or we hear other people say about us, or we tell ourselves, we don't belong here, you're not good enough. Everyone is going to find out that you're a fraud. Maybe I'm not even supposed to be in whatever career you're trying to be in. And I think when we're looking for jobs and you see these job descriptions, if you have a LinkedIn, it's very overwhelming. You getting this notification at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're trying to scroll through and you see this long job description and you start thinking, oh, I think I can do that. Oh, no, I can't do any of it. Okay, just forget it. Right. And we just kind of shut down before giving it an opportunity to see whether or not there's a chance for us. And this imposter syndrome really can manipulate and alter our view of reality, right? Because it tells us that what is true is not really true. And when you're going through the job process and you're looking for jobs and you're, transitioning from the college environment and culture to this professional culture, it is a big shift because that reality is very different than college. And so it's going to really rely on, and I'm going to talk about this later, really building up a strong support system and personal well-being to be able to not let this negativity to infiltrate every aspect of the job search, because that can make it take longer. It can maybe have you selecting jobs that you apply for that, deep down you just wouldn't be happy for, but you're just trying to hurry up and get a job because you want to work. And that's okay too, but I want to make sure that you know that you have the right to be picky and have options and explore those just like everybody else. And so I want to also just normalize imposter syndrome. It is common. It does not go away. These are folks in a company, it's called Lever, and these are high level executives who are still struggling with imposter syndrome. So I want to normalize that once you become a six-figure employee or you become an executive does not mean that the money and the title are going to wash away that syndrome. In fact, it may get worse. So knowing how to manage it now as an entry-level employee is going to be so critical for you to be able to manage it for yourself, but then to manage it for the employees that you might supervise one day or the department that you might manage and oversee. And that really can help infiltrate your culture and make it an open and honest culture where people are able to thrive and not let negativity and self-doubt get in the way of innovation where you are. So I like this saying. I just think it's really good. If you're able to believe in Santa Claus for 8 years, you can believe in yourself for 5 minutes. And I can't stress that enough, that it's really about believing in yourself. It sounds very corny, a little clunky, but I can't stress enough how true it is that when you believe in yourself and you invest in yourself and your worth and make sure to surround yourself with other people who also value you in that way, you are going to feel a lot more confident and secure in looking for jobs and then making sure to push that through as you're going through interviews to find the right place for you to be in this next stage in your life. So I talked about, the importance of finding, this like always happens.
I know.
And I have to like move the thing around the so that I can see. So when we're thinking about your support system, right, and thinking, okay, what does that need to look like? What do I need? I want the first thing for us to think about is reassessing your strengths. So then you can start to be able to focus on your weaknesses, because oftentimes we start the opposite way. We start focusing on our weaknesses and then we try to build up on our strengths. And I think it's very important that you can clearly articulate what your strengths are, how you have grown and developed them, how you then plan to use this company to help you develop them, and then how you have worked on and you recognize your weaknesses and how you play upon them so that they do not interfere with you being able to be a great employee and a great human being. And then discuss how you plan to use this company to build upon that weakness, right? So the keywords are professional development, conferences, mentorship, things of that nature. Maybe it's you're going back to college to get a master's degree or certification, whatever that is. um, Kind of have that in your background as you're starting to hear back from companies and interviewing. Okay, if they're tell me about your strengths, tell me about your weaknesses. You want to be able to rattle them off, but again, in a way that isn't so negative that they kind of worry, like, oh, I don't know, maybe this isn't good. So it's very strategic how you do it. And then as you're going through and applying for jobs and, doing that search and doing some self-reflection of, what am I looking for? What do I want? Am I ready to go into the workplace, or do I need to go back to college and go to graduate school, get a little bit more education under my backbone, so on and so forth? Either path that you take, it is so critical that you're taking care of your physical and mental health, and understanding what your needs are, because what you did to take care of yourself in high school, I'm sure, as you know, did not work when you got to college. And what you do in college, it may not work when you're moving on to this next stage. So being very in touch with yourself and managing that. So it could be that maybe you're only dedicating an hour or two a day to looking for a job and focusing on the job search versus spending 8 hours, because it is really consuming you and it's stressing you out. Making sure that you're eating well, making sure that you're getting rest, making sure that you have somebody to talk to, you have those resources, are going to be very helpful to make sure that you're learning what your triggers are so you can start learning how to respond to them. And it's just good practice for once you get a job, because that is a whole nother transition and another set of natural and normal stressors that also can create new stressors as well. You've got a plan in place of how you want to manage that, and you've got some practice doing that. This next point I think is so important, more so just because we are in a society where it's all in who you know. You bring yourself to the table, and then these other people around you, your support system, they're the ones that kind of help manifest, right, your professional destiny. And so I think it's important to have these three different components because they're going to be vital to each step of that. So your mentor is the person who's really kind of helping you develop you for the profession, how you're going to be viewed professionally. So maybe your mentor is helping you with your attire, understanding workplace culture. They're helping you with going over your resume, your cover letter, making sure it's really tailored to that. They're helping you unpack how you're going to explain why you want to work in this type of job. They're going to do a little bit of coaching, but different than a coach. Your sponsor is the person who is like, I would say they're like the people in the tower at the airport. They're just like your eyes and ears. They're watching out. They are not the air flight attendant who's helping you, like you're the captain of your plane. The air flight attendants are like your mentors, right? They're right there. They're helping keep things going. Your sponsor are the ones that make sure you're not crashing into things. They're the ones who are keeping their eyes and ears out and say, hey, I saw this job. I think you'd be good for it. Or I know this person and I want you to apply for this job because I put in a good word for you. You're not talking to them very often, maybe every 5 to 6 months, 3 months, just a good check-in. Hey, I'm still here. Here's what I've been working on. I just want to let you know. So as you are out there, you see anything, here's what I got and I'm ready. Your coach, they're the ones who are going to push you when you don't want to push. They're literally they're the ones who are like, get back in the game. You got to keep going. They're your tough love folks. They're the ones who maybe already have been where you want to be and they're where you're trying to be. And so they're really help giving you that nitty gritty. This is what you need to do and you're going to grin and bear it. And so think about who those people are, figure out if that's a good fit, explain to them if you know, okay, I've got an idea of who I think could be a good mentor, and talk with them like, here's what I'm looking for, and I'd like you to be my mentor. Here's what I'm expecting. You let me know if that's an expectation that you can meet or maybe we can find a compromise, or maybe you feel like you'd be better being my sponsor. Here's what that looks like for me or my coach. So approach them in that way, spend some time. And then this is something I hear pretty often too, I want to mention very quickly, is that oftentimes people want their support systems, their professional support systems to do the work for them. But I want to stress that you got to keep doing the work to grow you. They're the ones, again, who are just going to be your advocates in spaces that you can't enter, and or they're going to be the ones who are going to teach you how to get into that space. So if you want to work in the government, you definitely want to find some folks that work in the government, because it's hard to get on in the government and it takes a long time. Sometimes it could take a year or two from the time you submit your application and you're like moved on, you have a whole family, you live in a whole nother town, and then the government calls and like, hey, you remember you applied for this job? No, I do not, but I do today. I'd like to, let's go, right? So you want to be able to continue to grow you, so that it's a lot easier for them to help you. And then lastly, even though you're in college, so I know there's a freshman on here, and I know that some of you are graduating between now and December, take advantage of as many professional opportunities to play up on your strengths and improve your weaknesses. Nothing but space and opportunity. And quite honestly, in this climate, they're offering so many free and or significantly reduced price professional development certificates, trainings, things of that nature. And that's a good space where you can ask a sponsor, hey, excuse me, I'm really interested in learning this or getting this certificate. You know, do you know of any funding that I can access to help me pay for it? Would you be willing to sponsor me while I go through this program, this certification? Because here's how I believe it's going to help me. That's going to show that you're trying to do that work. And that's going to show them that here's how you're going to use what they're offering you. And this is how it's going to benefit them in the long run. So those are things to think about. And then lastly, again, moving this around, I want to stress that your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. And I can't stress this enough. So, you know, I have my job here at KU, which I love. I love working in higher education, and that's what I have my degrees in. But from my time working in higher education and outside of higher education, I've developed this brand of somebody who works in diversity and inclusion and equity. And so I'm able to do consulting work on the side because I've expanded my brand to be able to do assessments. I've expanded my brand to be able to work in community building, right? I've expanded my brand to be able to do research. And so I've really clearly cut out myself so that I can be relevant in multiple spaces, not just one, so that whoever is talking about me, whether they work in K through 12, whether they work in higher education or they're corporate, they know who I am and they know my work, and it speaks for itself, and it's still relevant no matter what space I'm in. So I always want you to think about, how are you going to maintain your relevancy across multiple areas and across multiple groups of people? That's your brand, and you get to control that narrative. And it does not define based on the application you submitted and your resume. You're more than that, and you get to control that. And now's the time for you to decide how you want that to look. So this is just a really good SWOT analysis for you to think about it for your professional aspect. So thinking a little bit more and trying to visualize it, right? So your strengths, these are these internal positive aspects that are under your control and which you can capitalize on in your planning. And then you've got your weaknesses. Those are those internal negative aspects that are under your control and that you have a plan to improve, but they're there. Positive, your opportunities are these positive external conditions that you do not have control over, but you can plan to take advantage of, right? So somebody said they're doing aerospace engineering and business. You want to think about what opportunities are there in the field for you to use those degrees, and where are the gaps at, and how can you fill in those gaps? What opportunities are available in the field that you could take advantage of so that you are so qualified and so necessary and vital, because other people don't have that and you already planned ahead to have that skill set or the expertise that folks don't have. And then I think this is just very important as you're graduating and as you're looking at the field. What are the threats to your field that can maybe shorten your time in there, and it's going to revolve a quick turnaround that you got to go get another degree, or you have to go get another certification or switch altogether. These are these negative external conditions that you don't have any control over, but the effect you can lessen. So what threats are in music? What threats are in environmental science, engineering? What threats are in the science field? Is it grant funding? Is it research lab opportunities? Is it that maybe the particular area of research you're interested in has started to slow down? People aren't leaving, they're not getting as much funding. Do you need to be open to learning another aspect of your research interest that can lessen the threat that it might have to your career goals? And so this is kind of where we lead into our professional and personal persistence. You're going to hear a lot when you get into working that this word retention, and very rarely are we hearing people talk about persistence. I tend to focus on persistence, but when I'm talking to supervisors and managers, I focus on retention with them. So persistence is the idea of what do I have to do as an individual to be able to stay and to grow and move forward. Retention is the company's job and their responsibility, what they need to do to keep you. So when in college, when you hear folks saying our retention rate is X, Y, and Z, that's who stayed and came back. But as an institution, theoretically, that's also what did we do to keep this person to stay? And so Tobias Wolff said, we are made to persist. That's how we find out who we are. You are starting that journey of finding out who you are by persisting through college, which is a journey in and of itself that anybody who can make it through, you are applauded because that is difficult. That next phase of your persistence in life is how you push through professionally. And you're made to do that. Getting that support in place, taking care of yourself, that's a key component of persistence. And getting that practice in is going to make it so much easier and comfortable for you when you move into the professional world. So I want you to think about, as you're wrapping up your time here in college, or you're just beginning your time in college, what motivates you? What keeps you going in your interest? What makes you happy and what brings you joy? Because sometimes your career is not going to meet those answers. And you got to have something outside of that to kind of ground you and keep you motivated to want to persist and to enjoy your job, but compartmentalize where I've got my own life outside of work, but I love my job and it doesn't consume me and interfere. How do you maintain your passions in life in order to engage in self-care? So I just had a conversation with a company yesterday, and they were like, well, if you do this job, this is all you get to do. You can't do what you do now. And I said, that's okay, because I have my own hobbies and goals that allow me to still keep that skill set that I won't be using with you. I can still do that with my consulting work on the side. So that keeps my passion and excitement going, and that helps me. What type of coping strategies do you have or need to develop in order to manage stress? In the work that I do, working in discrimination, harassment, what I often find is that hurt people in the workplace. People who have not done a good job managing their stress and developing good coping strategies tend to take it out on their coworkers and employees. Supervisors do that. And so you got to learn, what do you do to manage your stress so that it does not interfere with your work and make something professional become too personal. And the same is going to be for as you're applying for jobs. I see folks posting all the time, just how stressed they are. They've been applying for jobs for 6 months, a year, 2 years. And it's really critical to think about how you're managing all of that stress so that it does not lead to extensive mental health concerns, which do happen. And then what does your support system look like? I can't speak for everybody in terms of what their friends and family do, but I will say that when folks have a good, strong support system from their family and friends, it makes the world of difference. And then being able to push through looking for jobs and to stay in their jobs and do well, just because they have somebody outside of work to be able to help them take take that time away to relieve that stress and have an outside life separate from work. And that's what's going to help you stay strong. And then when you're thinking about your professional persistence, so we've talked about what do you have to do for yourself, your well-being. Thinking about your professional persistence, what did you do? Like, why did you pick your degree? When I worked in my previous institution, Mizzou, I worked in our program. It was our diversity program, particularly focused on first generation students and BIPOC students. And what we found was that a lot of students were picking law, medicine, business because their parents wanted them to pick those degrees. They didn't want them to be teachers because they didn't make any money. They had this very halo idea of getting these degrees, even though my students were not happy getting those degrees because that's not what they were interested in. And so they were very unhappy. And so I want you to think about, why you picked your area of interest in school, and then why did you stick with it? Because they're going to ask you that possibly in an interview. Why'd you pick that major? That's very interesting. Tell me about that. And then what did you do to stick with it? Did you do research programs? Did you do mentorship programs? Did you do experiment? Like, what did you do to stick with it? Because that's going to show them how you manage and how you work through something maybe you didn't like, or if it was challenging and difficult, but how you stuck with it. So you can turn that into a strength. The next thing is, what keeps you connected to the work? This is a question that you're going to be asked. Like, what would we need to do to keep you here? What are you going to do to stay connected to the work? And so the company, right? You may hate the job, but you love the company. I see that often. I can't stand this job, but I love working for this company because the benefits are great. They pay for childcare. They pay for me to go back and get my degree. What is it that's going to keep you connected? Because you can start looking for that as you're interviewing, right? You can look at the company website and their HR website and look at their benefits and go, that's some pretty good benefits. And what type of leadership opportunities? Looking at where you can grow and expand. Are you someone like me who, once I kind of figure out a job, I get bored very easily? So I want to know what's available for me to kind of keep me guessing, keep me challenged. And so that's what leads to this 5-year, 10-year, 20-year career trajectory. Please don't plan a 20-year right now, because you don't know who you are and how you'll be once you get that job. Those are questions that you should ask yourself maybe after your first job. What am I looking for? Is this still the right path that I'm on? Do I need to do some reevaluation? Because is it beneficial for me to stay in a relationship with this company and with this job? And so you're going to have to ask yourself, what are you going to need from your company or the business that you're applying to? What are you going to need from them in order to persist in your career until you're ready to retire? So I always think of, when I've applied for jobs, what can I get out of them that's going to help me reach the next level? And once I get that, did I get everything? Is there still something left on the table that I could get? And I'm not saying I want the dry pastries that have been sitting there that nobody wanted. I still want the fresh bakery goods that's available to me. And I'm going to keep using it until I've used everything and I'm ready to move on, or I'm ready to finish this time in my professional career. So this is, again, just another good opportunity just to visualize. Everybody's a little bit different. And so this right here is a SMART goal. So if you know that there's a particular job that you want or expertise that you want to have, writing out some goals of how you're going to accomplish that will really make sure that you're sticking to that and that it's reasonable. So being very specific. What is it that you want? Measurable. How am I going to make sure that I'm meeting that in a timely manner? It's realistic, it's attainable, and it's relevant and timely. So for example, I don't do the training anymore where I previously came from. I did all of our training for the entire campus, our healthcare system, and the community. And when I came here to KU, I wasn't doing that anymore. That wasn't a part of my job, but I miss it and I love it. And so I've had to kind of think outside the box of, well, I'm not getting this opportunity. So what else can I learn here? And so one of the things that I've said that I want to learn is I want to learn more about ADA accommodations and how to do affirmative action planning, because I see a lot of jobs that hire and want somebody to do affirmative action planning, and very few people have that skill set. And so that was a very specific goal for me. It's not so broad that I can't do it. It's pretty measurable because some places, some associations offer that certification. So I know I would get a certificate. I have to go through X amount of training. It's pretty attainable. It's costly, but who can I get to pay for it? Do I get KU to pay for it, or do I pay for it myself? And is it relevant? It's absolutely relevant to the work that I want to do, which is continuing to work in an EEO compliance, diversity aspect. And how timely is it? Is it going to interfere with my day-to-day work? Is this a commitment I have to do outside of that? And so what I did was I reached back out to folks that I considered a mentor professionally that were also my peers, but they had the expertise and they had been in the field for years. And I said, hey, I'm interested to learn how to do affirmative action planning. Can you give me some insight on how you gained your skill set? Because you can't go to college and major in affirmative action planning. Where do I need to go? How should I look? And within minutes, they emailed me back with a long list of where I could go, who I need to do, what conferences I need to go to be able to meet that goal. So that's my goal for this year. And I've shared that with my supervisor, and I'm really excited to accomplish that. So I just want to kind of show you how that worked for me and that it still happened. Even though I graduated in 2016, I'm still having to smart plan and write goals. So this is something applicable to you for way down the line. And then lastly, I want you to think about finding the right fit for you. And so that begins at the beginning, right? So that allows you to start investing towards your end of your professional career, but even the beginning, that starts right at the beginning where you're advocating for yourself and what you need. So during the job search, I can't stress enough that looking for their anti-discrimination policies, they're going to vary based on if it's a private company, a small company, a large corporation. But I want to see that if I experience harm in the workplace, that you have policies in place for me to resolve it, because they're going to happen. And if you, again, come from a marginalized identity such as myself, and I know that it's not going to be uncommon for me to experience discrimination. I don't want it to happen. I hope that it doesn't happen, but I can't be naive. I want to know what's available to me. I want to know what work are you doing proactively to engage and invest, right? We can say a lot, but I want to see where your money is to invest in diversity and inclusion initiatives. I'm looking for that. And then what are your reviews of the that you are finding on this corporation or practice, wherever it is you're trying to work? There are a lot of different ways to look at that. So don't just look at one site. Look across, more than Glassdoor. Look at LinkedIn. Look at Indeed. Ask them if you get an interview. I'd like to talk to some employees that work here and just gauge their experience working here. A lot of companies will do that for you. Even if you say that you want to talk with somebody who's in their affinity groups, affiliated with the affinity group that connects with your identity, those are great opportunities to get more authentic views of how the company is and how the company is with folks from similar identity backgrounds. And then knowing contact information is so important. I want your human resource contact information. I want your EEO. I want to make sure I know, federal EEO, how to file a complaint. I want to know the state's Human Rights Commission, the state AG office, ADA, Department of Labor. I know all those numbers because that's work that I do. But I think you all should know that as well, because I see a lot of folks who will post in groups that I'm in and say this and this happened. And I try to talk to HR, but they told me that it didn't matter. I need to be quiet, or please don't report this person who was harassing me. and I just don't know what to do. And 9 times out of 10, those people did not know that they can go straight to file an EEO complaint with the federal government to investigate employment discrimination. And they think they just have to suffer, right? So I want people to know that that's something. Keep that number in your phone, keep it in your background. And as a company, I'm going to look and see, can I access the information on your website? So I was looking for one, I was looking at a healthcare system, and I was trying to find their Title IX person. Nowhere on the website. And I Googled within the Google of the company and could not find it. That's a no-no for me. And that's a violation of federal law. You have to have that information available. You have to have that posted. So see, if you don't know that and nobody holds them accountable, companies would just be out here doing whatever, however, whenever. And you don't want to work for a company that's like that. You want to work for a company that is following the law, but also is going above and beyond what the law is asking them to do the bare minimum. That's how you're going to know if that's a good place. When you're looking at a professional fit, I want you to think about, how do you work best? Do you prefer to be in an office by yourself? Do you want cubicles? Do you like working in cubicles? Do you like working in a large lab, a small lab? What's your method of communication? Do you prefer meetings face to face, email? How do you want to be communicated? And this is also important too. How you value your time. Your time is just as valuable as your money, right? So some companies have a culture that you answer emails and phone calls all day and night. Other companies, once you hit 5 o'clock, it is inappropriate to email somebody and expect a response right away. You get a response the next day. So when you're interviewing, you can say, talk to me about your culture of communication. And, how do you value communication and time outside of the office hours? What does that look like? So those are good basic questions to ask. When they say, do you have any follow-up questions? That's a great question to ask. Promotions and pay raise. How often? What's it tied to? Is it linear? Is it vertical? What does it look like for promotions as well? Because if you're going into a job where you're never going to have opportunity to get promoted, you may start getting bored pretty quickly, and you may start getting a little lackadaisical on wanting to work there. So asking up front, talk to me about how promotion works. Is it tied to production? Is it tied to my annual review that I'm getting? What does that look like? How often is pay increased? I don't like when my money is funny, so I want to know upfront, what's that look like? What are benchmarks that I need to meet? Because then I can start working on that right away, and I'm not caught off guard. And I don't know until the last minute, oh, well, Brittany, you didn't hit this benchmark. And well, I didn't know I was supposed to hit that benchmark. And if I would have known, I would have started working on it and done that. So as much transparency as you can ask for and expect, ask for it. Professional development. Who's going to pay for it? How much are you going to pay for it? And you can say, a part of your negotiation, I would like $1,000 in professional development money every year. They may tell you no, we're in a recession in the middle of a pandemic. They may say, I can't do 1,000, but I can do 500. Okay, we can go somewhere with that. Asking who's going to do that is important. And lastly, what type of affinity groups and mentorship opportunities do they have? Those are basic questions that companies are asking, and some of them have it even up on their website. So if you don't see it on their website, ask, put a little asterisk. And if you do see it, ask about it even still and say, I'd like to expand more, learn more about that. Personal fit. One of the things that I want to you to think about is how you will be supported in the workplace. And when we talk about support in the workplace, really what I want you to think about is, what do you need again from them in that retention in order to be successful? So is having good onboarding important to you? And by onboarding, I mean training. So if they're supposed to train you on something, what does that look like for you? Do you want to sit in a computer and learn it? Do you need hands-on? How long do you need it for? My husband got a job with a company and he was supposed to go through training. Well, they didn't do training. They just gave him a book. And he was like, I've never worked in this field before. And this was doing transportation logistics. And he's like, I like training where I'm in a classroom, I'm learning, it's hands-on. That's important to me. You giving me a book that's outdated, I don't like that. So you got to figure out what that looks like for you. You also think about health and wellness. Think about, like, do they offer incentives for you to engage in health and wellness? Do they have a gym on site? Will they pay for you to get a gym membership somewhere? Do they have any type of health initiatives where you can get compensated, right? So Kim could tell you, as state employees, you can get compensated if you do health and wellness here. They'll take a percentage off of your insurance premium. They will give you funds that'll come into your paycheck. So there's a lot of different options that folks are asking that you can ask about and inquire about if it's important to you. Family structure, I think this is really important, and oftentimes we overlook it. What do the work hours look like, and are they reasonable for you and what you have going on in your life? And I talked about this with the communication, but will you be punished for not going above and beyond? I have 2 kids, and it's very difficult for me to meet outside in the evening. And is it expected of me that I have to work late into the hours at night and neglect my children in order to be considered a good employee? And people are pushing back on what is a good employee. Is it something, this imaginary employee that you want, versus what is a realistic employee that can actually do that work? And lastly, will your family be welcomed in the space, right? How welcoming are they to same-sex couples? If you have a family member or a partner that is disabled and they're in a wheelchair, is it accessible for them to come in? Would they be mindful and pick a place that's accessible for the company picnic that you can bring your partner to? Can you be your authentic self? And I think of that as, do I have to leave parts of me in the car before I go clock in? Can I come and bring myself? Now, obviously, we have to keep ourselves professional. And I'm not saying come and be who you are when you're with your friends or you're having a good time, but can I still not compromise who I am for a paycheck? I want to know that. And then just again, lastly, like talking to them about what your style of learning is, communication and teamwork style, and then what's their style of teaching, what's their style of communication and their teamwork style. My cousin, she works for Sprint, and we were talking about how they were trying out these new pods for how they put their teams together. So they got rid of the offices and cubicles and they opened up these pods. Well, people were playing their music really loud and it was very distracting to her. She did not like that. And so she had to advocate and say, hey, while this may work for you all and you're trying to try something out, it's not working for me and it's really disrupting my work. So how do we move beyond that? So asking those questions, thinking about those things, it is okay to ask, it's appropriate to ask, and they're going to help you make sure that you're picking the right place that's best for you. So that concludes my presentation. I wanted to leave as much time as I could. So we've got about 15 minutes. Does that sound like enough time to kind of chat and go through stuff? Okay.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? This was an excellent presentation, Brittany. Really, really helpful, because I think when you are new and you're going out in the workforce for the first time, you don't always think of these things. The one thing that I wanted to mention and also just get your brief answer on is these questions that you ponder and you consider and you want to ask your employer. I think it's important to know you don't ask this on the first interview.
Correct.
You do it maybe after you've been made an offer.
Yes. Some of those questions are after you've been made an offer. Other questions, it's really about how you word them and in what setting do you word them, right? So again, there may be questions that would be good if you're able to speak with somebody from the affinity group in the company. Some of them will be questions that are appropriate to maybe ask when you're in your final round with the supervisor versus the committee. So it's really being very strategic about when and where and how you ask them, but that you're still getting the answer. It's just when is that right opportunity to ask. And if you can find out as much on the front end, that's also very helpful. So then you know ahead of time, like, okay, yeah, this is not probably what it's going to be. And I know that ahead of time. Or you find that you can ask some more expounding questions, like you saw it, but you want to learn a little bit more.
And I think that's important because I think if you were to ask these questions right up at the very beginning, it could be a red flag if you come up with, I need this, 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 and this, and this, and they're going to say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, no, 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 that's too high maintenance right now. It's a first interview. But after they've made an offer, it's entirely appropriate
Mm-hmm.
to ask these questions. And I think it's important to really understand the environment you're going into because they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them, like you had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. When I took the job here at KU, I asked for more money and they weren't able to. And this is something I also want to stress is sometimes when we talk about negotiations, primarily the lens that we talk about it is from a monetary lens. But I really want to you to unpack that negotiation is more than just the money. Sometimes it is your time and it is your capacity that you're negotiating. So, for example, when I wasn't able to get more money at KU, what I did do is negotiate, okay, well, I'm moving my family here from another town. Can I have my start date be a little bit later? Can I leave early on every Friday because my daughter has to transition? She does competitive acrobatic gymnastics. Well, we had just started the season in Columbia, so we left every Friday to go back to Columbia so she can finish training, and then we had meets across the state. So I negotiated that as well to be able to do that.
yeah.
And I think one other thing, and I got that yes right away because what they could not make up for monetary, what I asked for was pretty reasonable given that I was asked to start so quickly and because they valued what I could bring, it was worth it to them to compromise and let me do that.
Thanks. Yeah. Are there any questions from the students here today? One of the things that you mentioned very early on that that I really resonated with, even someone who graduated close to 40 years ago, is that internal pep talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the fact that you put up CEOs that made comments because it doesn't matter what stage you're in, you have these internal pep talks. And I
Yeah.
think when you're a new student and you're going out in the workforce, you tend to look at these position descriptions and panic. Like you said,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not qualified. I don't have this. I don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And what you don't realize is that they will probably train you and that
Mm-hmm.
you have more skills than you think. And so I
Yeah.
love that you mentioned that because I think and students you might be able to relate to this. You're kind of panicked, you're not sure if you're going to be qualified for it and so forth. So I love that you mentioned that. And um, what do you think that I mean, what is your take on when you look at a position description and you say, oh, I've only got or two or three things that I look like I'm qualified for. Do you
Mm-hmm.
encourage students, go ahead and apply? Go ahead.
Yeah.
That. You have nothing to lose.
Yeah. I think that when you're looking at the job description and I do the search committee training with HR. And one of the things that we tell the search committee is that, you have, and you'll see this when you're applying for jobs, you have your preferred qualifications and your required qualifications. If you meet one or two of the required qualifications and you meet a lot of the preferred, apply. you know if the so for example in my area it'll always say a JD preferred, but it's not required. They prefer that you have years of experience and that you have like ability, good writing skills, communication skills, yeah, a background in education, things like that. And so some people get intimidated and say, I can't do your job. I don't have a JD. You don't need a JD to do my job. You just need the years of experience. That's just preferred. And in my office, none of us have a JD except for my supervisor. In my previous job, a lot of them had JDs, but they left their areas for various reasons. And their JD helped them, but they couldn't even use it in the work
Mhm.
because they're not practicing law. So it was more so preferred just because these people may have a clear legal writing background and they may have better understanding of interpreting the law. That doesn't mean that they have a better ability to interpret the law than I could, or, with my bachelor's degree or my master's degree. So looking at those two and being able, those can look kind of scary. And sometimes once we see the required, we just stop reading, keep going. Look at the preferred qualifications because oftentimes you do meet that. And even if you don't meet all of the required, but you still meet a lot of the preferred, still apply. Sometimes you never know, because that's how HR and how companies, that's how they sift through people. It's not necessarily on your resume, it's do you have the preferred qualifications? You got to click and mark those pretty quickly, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So keep looking through that job description. Don't get overwhelmed and stop reading. Keep going because you would see that, wow, I do have that experience. Or
Yeah.
as Kim said, I can get trained on that. Or even telling them, in your application, I'm taking this class right now and I will have that skill in 3 weeks. Once I'm done, I take that course.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah.
If there are not any questions, I have one more. Does any students have any questions you want to put in the chat? Quiet group today.
Yeah.
One of the slides that you put on was from Jeff. Jeff
Bezos.
Bezos. Yes, thank you. And you said something about your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room.
Hmm.
And that is really important for students, I think, to realize now, and how to create their brand. What are some ways that you can create your brand, or what are some avenues that really display your brand other than just talking to somebody and telling them who you are?
Yeah, really good question. I think it's about putting yourself out there. Sometimes, as college students, and even for me, I thought that the only space that I could really do anything was in my classroom. And so once I realized and learned and that there were so many other ways that I could expose myself, I was like, oh, okay, I kind of like this. So for example, in my undergrad, I did graduate research programs. So I did McNair Scholars. I did another graduate research program, the Lewis Stokes program, and I was able to help publish research on coping strategies for college students and whether or not college students tend to have more of a pessimistic or optimistic outlook on life.
Excellent.
Never in my dreams when I thought I'd do something like that. And then in graduate school, it was getting graduate assistantships. And so for me, it was just about, I did my graduate program where I did my undergraduate, but I maintained those relationships even though it was so long in between.
Yeah,
So I
that's true.
graduated in 2009, and I didn't go back to college for my master's until 2014, but I maintained those relationships. And so actually how I got into grad school was that I applied for a job working in admissions, and I used to work in admissions in undergrad. And they
Ah,
were hiring for an admissions recruiter actually. And I interviewed and they loved me. And the only reason why I did not get it was because the person who they originally offered the job to and declined it came back and wanted it. And so I came in second place. And I just felt so defeated. And the Chuck, who is the director of admissions, he said, we loved you and I wanted you so bad. I actually looked for other positions for you that I thought would be a good fit, and there just aren't any there. And so I said, okay, well, I really want to get back to working in higher education, and I just don't know what to do. And so he met me on campus and we sat and had coffee. And he said, Brittany, you would be great in higher education. You have to ask yourself, do you want to be a boss or do you want to be a worker forever? And based on how you answer that, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. And me, I was like, I want to be a
That
boss.
mentor aspect.
Yeah. I said, I want to be a boss, like what I need to do. And he was like, you need to go back to school. You need to get your master's. And then this will really be a great opportunity for you. And he was like, I will advocate and support that.
That's awesome.
And so that's what I did. I went back to school. And so those doors, keep them open,
Sure.
maintain them, check in every so often. Again, not kind of in a, I don't know, don't be a brown noser, but just like, hey, I just want to say I saw your work and congratulations, and just let you know I'm thinking of you. Those kind of checkpoints are going to be very critical for people to, if you do show back up, they're going to advocate for you. They're going to,
Yeah,
this is a
that's
good
true.
person. They're going to keep you. On the other end, what I do now that I'm in my profession is a lot of guest speaking and putting myself, offering my services, offering ways that I can help, and speaking at conferences. And so that's how I've been able to extend my brand beyond just my college, but to other colleges. I was invited to speak at the Michigan State. They flew me out to come and speak to their fraternity and sorority life, about violence prevention
Okay.
in their work.
Yeah.
So really, yeah, just think about where you see yourself and who's in that space. And again, that's where it goes back to asking those sponsors, like, would you sponsor or pay for me to go to this conference?
Yeah.
If you all ask student affairs, there's a lot of money out there from student senate and from student affairs and from academic departments that will sponsor you to go to a conference.
Good.
They will pay for you to go and speak. Graduate studies has money for undergraduate students who are interested in research. Take advantage of it. You should never have to pay for graduate school, and you should never have to pay for professional development and networking, if at all. So if
Very good.
somebody
Well,
else
and
is paying for it, do it.
sounds good. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Brittany, for being here. It was an outstanding presentation. I learned a lot. I've seen this before, but I learned it's retention here in my brain. I've learned a lot. Students, if you want more information on salary negotiation, we are having something later in week 3 of boot camp for interviewing. So that'll be helpful.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, you can reach out to me and I can extend them on to Brittany.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you at our next live event. So thank you very
Sounds
much.
good. Thank y'all so much for coming.